I'm turning on the recorder. And Lisa, hello, Lisa. Great to see you also. Okay. Take a drink of water. Hold on. We've had so much drama in the Parshas. We had all of the Parshas that were about the 10 plagues, Moshe taking the Jewish people out, all the drama of Pharaoh's hardening his heart, etc. We left Egypt, splitting of the sea, the song of the sea. We get to Mount Sinai. We have the thunder and lightning show, all last Parsha for the giving of Torah at Mount Sinai. God reveals God's self to the Jewish people, to 3 million people. And it was quite an amazing series of Parshas. And then we come to this week's Parsha. The Parsha is called Mishpatim. Mishpatim, the word Mishpatim comes from the word Mishpat. The root of that is shofet, which means a judge. So a shofet is a judge. Later in the summer, we'll have a Parsha called Shoftim, which is about judges. But these are about Mishpatim, but it's the same root. And this has to do with the laws that are considered the laws that are the basis for civilization. Basically, for humanity to get along and to do well, if you read these laws, a lot of them you're going to see in laws of countries that are well run. I'm not saying that they're 100% successful, but at least they have the laws on the books that they're trying to live up to a certain standard of behavior of people to people, people with their neighbors, in business, in government, in all sorts of human relationships, employer, employee. All of that is found in the Parsha of Mishpatim. There are 53 separate mitzvot in this Parsha, so it has a huge number of details. However, it is boring. There's not anything really interesting in here. And it starts off, in fact, it was, trying to remember which of those rabbis from Torah Anytime who mentions it. I think it was Rabbi Gladstein, but I'm not sure. It might have been somebody else, but it was not my observation. If you want to turn to the Parsha, if you have the Chumash, it starts out on, if you have the, whatchamacallit, the stone Chumash, it is on page 417. If you're just in a regular Chumash looking at it, it is chapter 21 of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 1. And the way it starts out is the word Va'ele hamishpatim, and these are the ordinances that you shall place before them. So our sages make a huge deal over the fact that the Parsha starts, hold on a second, I'm gonna sneeze. Guess I'm not. That the Parsha starts with a Vav. Last week we talked about the letter Vav in connection with Yitro, that Vav is the letter of connection, that it's called a Vav ha-chibur, a Vav of connection. And in Hebrew grammar, Vav means and, which is why the first word in the Parsha is and. And these are the ordinances that you shall place before them. What is this coming to tell us? It's coming to show us and tell us that it's all well and good to have the Sinai experience. It's amazing to have the thunder and lightning show. It's amazing to have that spiritual peak experience where the people were so moved. It says their souls literally left them. Their neshamas went out of their body and God had to put them back in order to hear the next mitzvah because it was such an overwhelming peak experience. But guess what? That's not where we live our lives. No matter how peak a peak experience is, there's the day after. And the day after is Parshas Mishpatim. So it says, Va'ela HaMishpatim. And these are the Mishpatim. These are the ordinances that you need to fulfill in order to bring that spiritual experience down to earth and down into the real world. A holy people is a nation that follows the Mishpatim. It's not people who had a peak spiritual experience. That was just to get us started. That is just to get us started. Like any peak experience, it's always about what do you do the day after and what does it look like on the street? What does it look like in your house? What does it look like in the store? What does it look like in your relationship with neighbors, with employers, employees, friends, colleagues? That's where we get the real mark of the Jewish people. And so that is Ve'ela HaMishpatim. And now these are the Mishpatim, and they're as much a part of the Sinai experience as the thunder and lightning. And when people try to disconnect those, then you have a big problem. Then you have people, first of all, just seeking one spiritual high after the next with no substance, and it doesn't work that way. On the other hand, you can have laws without a spiritual experience, and then they also deteriorate. It needs to be the two, the Sinai magical experience, and then the Sinai, let's get down to, as I say, tachlis, let's get down to brass tacks of how we're actually going to work and obey and behave in this world. So that's the Ve'ela HaMishpatim, and this is the Parsha that we have. That being said, this week, this Shabbos is also a special Shabbos, and we're going to talk about that more at length. So this Shabbos is called Shabbat Shekalim, which is the plural of the word shekel, which is probably familiar to people who have traveled to Israel because that's the name of Israeli currency, is shekel. So Shekalim is the Shabbat of money, the Shabbat of the shekel, where the Jewish people, we are commemorating when the money was collected for the temple, for the Beit HaMikdash, as well as for the Mishkan, for the portable sanctuary. And what was very interesting about this fundraising event was that everybody was required to pay the exact same amount. And the amount that they paid is going to be part of the Torah reading for this week as well. So we're going to read the Parsha of Mishpatim, but then we're going to read an additional section that comes from the Parsha that's called Kitisa, which talks about the obligation of paying the half shekel. So if you want to keep your string where you were, that's fine, or you can move to the next place, which is on page 485 in the Chumash, or chapter 30, verse 13. So it says that every person, the verse 13, this shall they give, everyone who passes through the census, a half shekel of the sacred shekel, and then it tells how much it's worth. A half of a shekel is a portion to Hashem. And then it says in verse 15, the wealthy shall not increase, and the destitute shall not decrease from half a shekel. So everybody, whether rich or poor, gives a half shekel. It was so clearly there had to be a half shekel, you couldn't give a shekel and ask for a half shekel in change. So it wasn't even that you could give that amount, but you physically gave an actual shekel. It says that didn't work that way. You had to give a half shekel. So of course the question is, first of all, wouldn't that be amazing if everybody gave the same thing? So what is it we are learning from this? It says, what are we learning about from the half shekel? We always read this as one of the special Torah portions that we read before Purim. Before Purim, we always read Shabbat, this message about the shekel and the giving of the half shekel. So the question is, so let's hear some ideas. You can unmute if you want to offer something. What would be the purpose for giving just a half shekel? First of all, why everybody the same? And why a half of a shekel? Why not a whole shekel? As long as you're going to collect money. I've never known a fundraiser say, we just want a $50. We just want, like, give me at least $1. Why a half shekel? And why the same for whether you're rich or you're poor? Any thoughts? Darlene?
Well, it's kind of the great equalizer. It puts us all on the same level, for one. And my guess about the half shekel is like we're not whole until we're together with the rest of our klal. We're just not complete.
Very good. That's exactly right. So we've got the great equalizer that everybody is of equal value and respect before Hashem. That yes, there are people who have jobs and positions that we accord more honor because of the tasks that they have, like the person who is the rabbi or the Kohen or the Levi or whatever it is. But the Moshe paid a half shekel and the lowest person paid a half shekel. Each person is a half shekel. So the great equalizer as far as respect in front of Hashem. And then the half is because me without you, I'm nothing. So it's really like those heart necklaces. that you have, where you have like a half and it has like, looks like a puzzle piece, and somebody else has the other half. It says this is a mindset. This isn't just like a sweet, you know, girlfriendy, boyfriend, girlfriendy thing of like, oh, half my heart. It's like, no, without the other person, you are not complete. And it's not just that I, as an individual, am not complete without the other person. The Jewish people are not complete without each other. We must be unified. So the fact that it is made level, and that people are taught kind of going this way, keeping everybody level, as well as I'm only half the picture. The message was, we are one group. We are unified. So that was a very important thing. So the question is, first, let me ask if anybody else has any other additional thoughts about those shekels, about the half shekel. Anybody else? Okay. Yes, Darlene.
I'm sorry.
Darlene, and then Lisa.
Just really quick, when you made a reference to where that's mentioned, it's a few parshas in the future.
Yes.
This parsha doesn't have that in it. It's just this Shabbos is when it's called Shabbos.
So it's called Shabbos Shekalim, Shabbat Shekalim, and the maftir, the additional Torah reading, will be taken from the beginning of this parsha of Kitisa, that has the commandment about collecting the half shekel.
Okay.
And then in a few weeks, we're going to read the parsha as an actual parsha. But for Shabbat Shekalim, we read just these few verses about the collection of the half shekel, because it's Shabbat Shekalim.
So is it always 2 Shabbosim before Purim?
Yes. So it's Shabbat Shekalim, and then after that is going to be Parshat Zachor, which is to remember Amalek, and then it'll be Purim.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's going to be the one, yes. So there's always that special Shabbos. So there's 2 special Shabbos before Purim.
Right.
One is Shabbat Shekalim, and the next one is Zachor, which is remember what Amalek tried to do to you. And they're related. They are related to each other as well.
Thank
so
you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said thank you for clarifying.
Oh, sure. And Lisa, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I think that I read somewhere that it was their way of taking a census in ancient times. So it would be a shame if it was more than a half shekel. That way you might not be able to be counted, like you just didn't matter. So, so I think that I read that it's like the ancient times equivalent of taking a census like we do today.
So yes, it was also done for a census purpose, but not because they didn't know how to take a census. Is you're not allowed to count Jews. You're not allowed to count people.
Oh,
and so you counted the money that they gave instead. So at that level, you could just give 1 shekel, that you could count 1 shekels as well. It's like when you count for a minyan, you don't count people. You don't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are a couple different verses from the Torah that have 10 words, and you kind of say each word in lieu as you look at the person, and you count them through the words of the verse, as opposed to, so you don't count people.
That's so cool.
Which is really cool. So it's not, but you also want to know how many there are. So so it's kind of a paradox. We want to know how many people there are, but we're not counting you. So that's why the half shekel was used. So that answers part of the question for that piece. But we still have the fact that from the non-census part, that it has to do, because it wasn't always for census, it was also for collection of funds. So usually, I don't know, you're Lisa, you know from being in the fundraising world, usually the goal of fundraising is to collect the maximum, not an equal amount.
Well, not always. Sometimes it's about participation.
Yes.
It's about, having everybody be part of it rather than, I would prefer to have a smaller campaign and have everybody be a part of it than to have a big campaign funded by 2 or 3 people.
You have a Jewish attitude, because that's really what this is. It's like, this is about everybody participating. This is like, we don't have, so on many levels, it's like, we don't have a real community if everyone's not participating. And I love campaigns that are 100% participation goals as opposed to maximum funds. First of all, in the end, you often get just as much, if not more money anyway, just anyway. Also, it's a different message. The message is, we want you, we need you. Even if it's 5 cents, we need you. So that was the other thing about the half shekel, is it wasn't all that much money. I mean, it was something, but it wasn't like it wasn't a fortune, but people gave the same amount. So it's about the participation. And when it comes to the Jewish people, it says like, participation is good for any organization. Any organization would like that. Any organization could benefit from people all feeling equally respected. Any organization, a community can feel good about everybody knowing that I'm only part of it, and that I need to be with other people. And when it comes to the Jewish people, there's a higher message even still, which is that the unity of the Jewish people is an obligation, because our primary task in this world is to represent God. If the one thing that we can say with certainty about God is like, we can't really say a whole lot about God except what the Torah tells us. But the one thing that we can say, that we do say, and that we give witness as saying, is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. The oneness of Hashem is the ultimate reality that the Jewish people are responsible for manifesting in this world. How do we do it? We run around like chickens with our heads cut off saying, God is one, God is one, God is one. This is no. The way we do that is by reflecting oneness in this world through us. We are the mirror of God. So when there is oneness and unity in the Jewish people, then it's said that God's reality is then completely manifested. When we are not unified, it says we're doing damage. It's called doing damage to God's throne and to God's name. It's like we're misrepresenting God. It's like, I'm not seeing any oneness. I don't see oneness. And when we don't have that oneness, it says we're considered vulnerable, not just from a, any type of a military thing. You'd say, if the troops aren't unified, then we're going to be vulnerable. Of course, you're going to be vulnerable. But this is talking about all of reality becomes vulnerable, and the Jewish people as a reflection of God in this world. We become vulnerable. This is why this is read before Purim. Because the Purim narrative, the Purim events, were all about the vulnerability of the Jewish people to an attack by Amalek. Amalek's descendant, Haman. The Amalekites are the ones who attacked the Jewish people when it was that we were in a place of, when the Amalekites first attacked the Jewish people after we crossed the Red Sea. That was back in Parsha Bishalach, at the end of Bishalach. And it says that the Jewish people, that they were in a bad place. If you want to take a look at that, that's on page 391. It's chapter 17, verse 8. It says, Amalek came and battled Israel in Rephidim. Rephidim, the root of that word, it sounds kind of like the word separate. Can you hear the words? Rephidim, Pered, Perud means to be separated. It says that the Jewish people, there was some sort of a place of disconnect there, and it made them vulnerable to the attack by Amalek. It says when there is discord and when there is a breakdown either in our faith in God, in our connection with each other, primarily that, it says it makes us vulnerable to an attack by Amalek, and that's exactly what happened. And that's what happens at Purim as well. Because what does Haman come to say to Achashverosh? So if you have the Chumash, you can turn the Megillat Esther is in the back of the Chumash, and it's on page 1255 in the stone. I'll just read it to you. Verse 8 of chapter 3 says, Then Haman said to King Achashverosh, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your realm. That was the primary accusation. They are scattered and they are dispersed in the same word. They are mifuzar, scattered, umiforad, same word, rephidim. They are separated, which means they God, you don't have to worry about anything. They're going to be subject and able to be attacked, no problem, because they are separated. They've gotten in a place where they are now vulnerable. So what's the antidote to that? Everything about Purim is about saying, no, we're not, no, we're not, we're together. So how do we see this in Purim? The first thing we're going to see, if you remember, we can start reviewing the story already, is once Mordechai convinces Esther that she needs to act, what's the first thing that Esther tells Mordechai to tell the Jewish people? What's our first line of defense? What's the first thing we're going to do?
Fast.
Fast, great, okay,
and
great.
pray.
Fast and pray,
And
yes, but there's a little bit more right beforehand. That is, Esther says to Mordechai, it's on page 1256, verse 15 and 16. Then Esther said to reply to Mordechai, go assemble all the Jews to be found in Shushan and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days. Fasting and praying would have been great, but only in the context of kinus, of bringing everybody together. Bring the Jews together. So that's our strategy, bringing us together. It wasn't go sharpen your swords. It wasn't go, prepare your military strategy. The strategy is bring the Jewish people together. Now, again, from any kind of military strategy, having people all together on the same page is always a good idea. But our cause is different. Ours is because we're reflecting God. And so when we're saying that God is one, we have to be one in order for that whole system to work. And then we see what are the mitzvahs of Purim. It strikes me so interesting every single time. I'm always just so surprised to see that the mitzvahs of Purim are about doing things to bring people together. So what are we supposed to do on Purim to bring people together? We have a couple of different things. Darlene and Etta, yes.
One is we take gifts to other people.
Exactly. Right. That's right.
Manot.
Mishloach manot ish l're'ehu, for the purpose of bringing people together. If I have a hamantashen and a bottle of Coke, and you have a hamantashen and a bottle of Coke, and I give you mine, and you give me yours, at the end of the day, we still have a bottle of hamantashen and a bottle of Coke. But a connection has been made because I'm saying, no, we are not separated, we're together. So we have that. And Etta, what else do we have?
We have a Purim feast.
Exactly, the Purim Seuda, okay? A Seuda, which you're supposed to hopefully invite people to. And then we have gifts to the poor to include them because everyone has to be included. And if they can't be physically with us, there needs to be some message of you are my other half. You are my other half. Without you, I'm not. Hallmark could really design a great line of cards. I don't know why they haven't yet. You are my other half. Without you, I am nothing. I'm only a half shekel without you. I mean, whatever it is, that's basically what we're saying. So is that the collection of the money is that Haman paid money for the privilege of annihilating the Jewish people. He paid for the privilege of annihilating us. And what's the antidote? What do we say about this? We say our antidote is we already paid the anti-Haman money, that's why we do Shabbat Shekalim before Purim. We're saying your money's not going to be successful because we already put our money in as an expression of unity of the Jewish people. Your money will not be effective. And that's what allows the tide to turn and for things to go the other way and for the Jewish people to be saved. As long as we are unified, says that's our ultimate defense. That's our ultimate, everyone's very hyper aware now about immune systems. And when you have an immune system, if you don't have an immune system, what happens, what doesn't happen? The immune system of the Jewish people is the unity of the Jewish people. And that's actually it. So on one hand, it's very simple. On the other hand, people are like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get there. It's like, we've been there before and we can get there again. And every Purim, we go through this specific exercise to remind ourselves of this. Not that it's only operable at Purim time, but we call our attention to it and we really work to understand reality correctly. And when we get to that perception, it should really fill us with tremendous simcha. So when we talk about that Adar is going to start, Thursday night is Rosh Chodesh Adar. And when Adar starts, simcha increases. It's like there's lots of things that can give us simcha. It's like, what's giving us simcha? Like simcha can come from the sense of like, I'm in this with other people. I'm part of something bigger. I'm doing something that matters. All of that gives us a sense of simcha. Because people get happy. Why do I get happy if somebody drops off a little box of raisins and 5 peanuts to my house? I'm like, thank you so much. Did I really? I have raisins and peanuts in my own house. I don't need your raisins and peanuts. But it was like, thank you so much for that expression of connection and kindness. And we're all together. That's what makes us happy, is the connection. That's the simcha. So we're going to be celebrating that too on Shabbos, because this year Adar is a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. It starts Thursday night and it's Friday, and the actual first day of Adar falls on Shabbos. So it's going to be a Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, Shabbat Shekalim, and Parsha Mishpatim. And all of this has to do with how we are treating other people. The Ahavta l'reacha kamocha you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Ani Hashem, I am God, is equal in gematria to v'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. You shall love the Lord your God. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am God, and you shall love the Lord your God. Is all equal. Those things are a mathematical equivalency. This is because they are the same thing. So how do we say how we really manifest? Like, I'm a believer in God. Someone says like, okay, that sounds nice. What does it look like? I want to see how you are treating other people. That's how I'm going to know if you are really a believer in God. That's why we have all of our greatest Jewish people, our Gedolei Hador, our great people of the generation. Doesn't matter how much they know. Doesn't matter how much Torah they know. If they're not also known for their acts of kindness, sensitivity, humility, appreciation, generosity, we don't count it. We don't count it. Okay, that's not the case like with people who are getting Nobel Prizes. There's not one for character. There's not one for generosity. There's not one for humility. It's like you can be an amazing scientist and be a jerk. You can be an incredible poet and be immoral. You can be all of these things and nobody really cares about that. They just want to know, like, are you good at the thing that you say you do? But to be good at Torah, to be good in a relationship with God, means you're good with a relationship with people. And there's no way around that. And the unity of the Jewish people is a reflection of God's oneness. That becomes our primary task. It's our primary task. Thoughts and questions, ideas about this. Very challenging, but fun work that we have to do.
Ellyn?
Yes. Yes, is that Darlene?
Hi. Yes, it is.
This is Darlene from Israel. She is one of our sponsors of our class. I'm so glad you joined us in memory of your beloved parents, Betty and Alfie.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm actually awake.
I'm impressed. I mean, I hope it's for a good reason for this and not that you had insomnia and couldn't sleep. But.
No, it's okay. I was going to hit the sack and then I decided to log in, and I've enjoyed your speech. So I have one question is, what's the correlation between Parshat Shekalim and Purim lots?
The Purim lots. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I don't know what that might be. I mean, it's interesting because lottery is like the opposite concept. That's the concept of chance. And everything that like we do is so intentional and so focused on doing things in a intentional, focused, defined way. But I'm going to think about that, Darlene. I'm not sure.
Okay. And you mentioned before, I had to disconnect for a minute, so you may have mentioned this, but you said like, okay, you have a bottle of wine and a lachmaria, a roll or something, and you bring it to me, and then I'm bringing you something, the same thing. So years ago, we came to the decision that it became kind of silly for people who generally have or don't have to give things like that to others, and therefore we only give charity on Purim instead of mishloach manot.
Okay,
Because
so I'll
felt kind of silly.
Okay,
to,
so you may want to check with your local Orthodox rabbi, because there's two different things. One is charity, which is matanot le'evyonim, of charity, and one is mishloach manot. So
yes,
there
so
is
we give two manot to people who really need it.
Oh, that's fine then. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, no, as long as you actually give food that can be eaten by the people, that doesn't need further preparation, that's all. And you only need to give, to another person. That's all you need to do. So that's fine. We do the same thing. Is we do we give to some people food, and then others we do donations to, usually someplace in Israel, Meir Panim, whatever, I can't even think of it, like Leket, or one of these organizations that provides food, but it's not in lieu of mishloach manot. Mishloach manot is actual food. That's really tzedakah, which is a huge thing. And we're told that you really should spend more on tzedakah than you spend on your mishloach manot, on your treats, because that's huge, because we want to make sure that the poor are Hashem's VIPs. That's who Hashem is looking out for. And so we are making sure that they are getting the most. Also, it's a great opportunity. Mishloach manot is also a great opportunity to reach out to people who either you don't see as often, or who in your own mind you may not feel as close to. So this doesn't mean to become suspicious of anyone who sends you mishloach manot thinking, do they think I'm not really their friend or what? So it's not for that reason. But since the whole purpose is to create connection and community and this bond that we have with each other, giving them to people who we aren't connected to for whatever reason. Or it could be somebody who doesn't know about Purim, who isn't so connected to the Jewish community and needs to be kind of reminded that they're part of it too. Haman's decrees, like when people talk about Yimach Shemo, his name should be eliminated, of Hitler. Hitler didn't really care if you were observant or not observant. Yeah, he was happy to wipe you out no matter who you were. As was Haman. He didn't have a religiosity test. And so when we bring people in and say, we're all together, we're all one people, because our oneness is a reflection of Hashem's oneness, then we're making that message. And instead of standing up on a street corner and just, talking about it, it's like, what can I do? And that's why I think Judaism is so beautiful. What can I do to show that I feel connected to other people? Well, here's an idea: connect with other people. There you go, and do something. So to give something, and it doesn't say spend a fortune, it just says a little something. It's almost like I'm thinking of you, and you are part of us, you are part of me. And that becomes really important. So there are wonderful organizations that do specific fundraising campaigns for Purim. And there's so many wonderful places to give to. Those are all great. And we give things treats too, and it's fun. And then unfortunately, because people have a tendency to go overboard in everything, then there are always people where there's a competition of how amazing their shalach manas is, and this one has an expensive wine and this and that, and people can spend a lot of money, too much money. It becomes like anything else where people overdo it. So that always has to be kind of kept in mind as well, of keeping it moderate. So that becomes a challenge. So these are all the things, but the underlying goal is that we are trying to create this connection between Jewish people, because that is our antidote to Amalek. That is our only antidote, is the unity of the Jewish people. I have to say, it's one of the things that I like about Zoom. It's like, you all have like an equal square, you know, it's like everybody's here. Doesn't matter if you're in Israel, if you're in Houston, California, wherever anybody is, you know, you get the same size square. Everybody gets the same thing. And it's great. It's really very special to see everybody coming together just in it's almost like, it really is like a quilt of the Jewish people. It's really beautiful. Darlene, were you, oh.
Well, yeah, no, I was going through some photo albums, and I found an album. We moved to Houston about 18 and a half years ago. So our very first Purim in Denver, I had lived there all my life. So we had people that we exchanged with. And then even though we had just lived here like 8 months, I didn't remember this. But when I saw the album, it was, we had one young daughter living at home, and we kind of were feeling sorry for her that she wasn't going to experience Purim with getting little gifts like our other daughters did when we lived in Denver. And so this picture sort of refreshed my memory that we had, that the community here really made us feel so included, even though we were just there for a number of months, but they had dropped off little gifts. And when you were talking about making us feel like one, looking at that picture made me remember how good it felt to be like, oh, I guess we are part of this community now. We received raisins and nuts and whatever, you know, and it just kind of brought that memory back. So even though it is a lot of little, you know, sometimes calories to eat, it does come with its meaning of like someone's thinking of me. So yeah, it can't be underestimated.
Yeah, that those little gestures mean a lot.
Right.
You know, they really do mean a lot to people. And that's what we're here. So we're here to create a vibe, you know, and if we could see like a Google Map web being woven of the connection of Jewish people together, from Shalach Manas to this, and Tzedakah and Seudah, the feast, all these things creating is like, this is our protective web that we have, because we're manifesting who God is. So yes, it's important on lots of level. Oh yes, and to hear the Megillah absolutely is the fourth mitzvah, is to hear the Megillah, and ideally, not necessarily, sometimes during COVID time it's not going to work, hearing the Megillah in the presence of other people, of coming together as a community, because we were all in this together. So the description of what the world is like now, because the Jewish people have not yet managed to reach this level of unity, and we have not yet managed, therefore, to eradicate the threat of Amalek that is always trying to destroy us, whether it's through the United Nations people or different countries or different individuals. It seems like somebody's always after us. It says, where is their power coming from? Why do they have the power to do any of this? So yes, we're supposed to fight through ADL and through all these other things, but in the end, guess what? That's not what's going to do it. What's really going to do it is Queen Esther's plan. Go and gather the Jewish people together. And when you say fast for something, say, what did their fasting really do for her? I mean, seriously, she was the one who was going into King Ahasuerus to risk her life. Didn't really do anything, except that it gave her the strength, because she really drew on the strength of the other people. She went in on the strength of the Jewish people, not just her own. So when it says in the Megillah, it says that she, before she goes in, that she put on Malchut, she put on royalty. It says, how do you put on royalty? She was already a queen. What, she was wearing her sweats and then she put on her crown and her, you know, fancy dress to go in? It's like, what does that mean? To put on royalty, it says you achieve royalty when you have a kingdom. Okay, if a king with no kingdom or a queen with no queendom is not a queen. You're a nothing. You're just in a costume. She put on the royalty, really representing the Jewish people, because she really was royalty. She was a descendant of King Saul. So she goes in as a descendant of King Saul. She really is royalty. And she goes in with the strength of the Jewish people, which allows her to do what she does. So when we have that, then It's called God's throne will be complete. Until then, it's considered that God's throne is a little wobbly. So I want to share with you, it's described in the words of God's throne. And it is, we read it again at the end of Parsha Bishalach. We read about, it's on page 393, or chapter 17, verse 14 through 16. But this is about, Hashem said to Moshe, write this as a remembrance in the book and recite it in the ears of Yehoshua, that I shall surely erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. Moshe built an altar and called it Hashem is my miracle. And he said, for the hand is on the throne of God. Hashem maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation. Like we will say at Pesach, B'chol dor vador. In every generation, they rise up against us. It says the force of Amalek is the force. It's the barometer of the force that is to the extent that God's throne has not yet been established. And filled is the extent to Amalek has power. What this is called is that Hashem's throne is deficient. Now, in English, you don't see it because it says, for the hand is on the throne of God. The throne of God. So, okay. But in Hebrew, you see it. So in the Hebrew, which is Renee, next to the letters Tet Zion in the Hebrew, it says, Vayomer, and he said, Ki yad, the hand, al case ya, milchama lashem ba'amalek midor dor. The hand is on the case yud hey. Case means chair or throne, probably also the origin of the word keister for your behind, as in get off your keister, get off your chair, is the word. Yeah, right, it should be kisei, but chair. Here it is not kisei. There's a letter missing. It should be kaf samach aleph for kisei, meaning throne, and yah, yud hey, is only half of God's name. God's rest of God's name is Yud Hey Vav Hey. So now I'm going to share the screen so you'll be able to see what this looks like. Hopefully this is going to come up because I created it before. So hopefully this is going to be right. There we go. Do you all see that?
You say.
Okay. So you can see,
Yeah.
this is what it says in the Torah here. Case Yud Hey. It's really supposed to be Kisei Yud Hey plus Vav Hey. It says in the future, when Amalek is destroyed, then Hashem's throne will be complete. Until then, we have this partial. We don't have the whole thing. And what's going to make it whole is going to start from us. And the way it starts from us is by our unifying ourselves and coming together to represent God in reality. Then we will be able to have God's throne established. We also refer to this at the end of Aleinu. At the end of Aleinu, we say on that day, Hashem will be one and his name one. It's like Hashem already is one. It's like, well, it's not exactly looking like it because the Jewish people aren't one, which means that we're misrepresenting Hashem. So Hashem isn't one and his name isn't one, even though he is one. So the responsibility is on the Jewish people. That's the purpose of the Torah, is to show us how to manifest God's oneness, and that we're supposed to come together to do that. So we're going to read that for this week's Parsha of the Shabbat Shekalim, to have the half shekel. It's going to be Rosh Chodesh Adar. Already, Renee and I were in shul together. It was already wonderful when they announced the new month. The person who was davening already was using Purim melodies for the announcement of the new month, and in the Kedusha and part of the davening. So you could like already start feeling Purim come. So it was really as soon as we hit the beginning of Adar, we're already starting the process. And the first thing that we're going to do, the very first thing we're going to do is have Shabbat Shekalim, the Shabbos of bringing all these shekels together, of bringing all the Jewish people together as one. Thoughts, ideas, questions, anything about Purim, about Shabbat Shekalim?
Maybe just a hope. Last year, this time is when things really started to spin out of control right after Purim. There was such big breakouts back east, and a lot of the spreading tragically occurred around Purim in that community. And please God, let this year there be an antidote for it, that we
That's right.
become more, you know.
That's right. Hopefully we'll get to be in a
Yeah.
different place with that. Well,
Yeah,
we'll all
and-
have our Purim costumes. You already got your mask arranged. Okay, so
Right.
that's good. Okay, so you just need to decorate your mask and you'll be good. You don't even need anything.
Right.
Between covering
Well,
your eyes and covering your face, you will be completely disguised. Nobody will know who you are.
There was a cartoon at Halloween time about a child was looking at a person without a mask on and said, "Isn't that person so scary?" Because they weren't wearing a mask, because everybody, because of COVID, was wearing a mask. So sort of
I
Yes.
did something
bad.
interesting this Tu B'Shvat. In my baskets that I sent out, I included a mask for Purim,
Oh, that was so
a
nice.
decorated mask, so they could look forward and be excited for Purim.
Oh,
I remember Purim last year. It was a very happy Simcha, and then I remember the week after. Well, actually, that week of Purim, my husband got a completely remote job. So before we even knew COVID was hitting, he got a completely remote job, so he did not have to travel.
that's amazing.
That was miracle number one. Miracle number two was that I left New York on March 2nd, the day that the first case of COVID hit New York City.
Wow.
Um,
Thank God.
many
I'm glad
miracles
you
have
are.
happened here.
I'm glad you are well and that things worked out. Gabi, and then Annette.
I always, when you ask that question, I always say the same thing because it was a huge miracle. Again, 1991, had Saddam Hussein, second Gulf War, 6 weeks of missiles in Israel. I was living in Rehovot. One hit really close, but when did we win and everything stopped? On Purim.
I
I mean-
remember that so clearly at the Megillah reading of getting the news the war was over. It's just amazing.
And they were going to actually stop another day, and it was postponed. I don't know for one reason, and then it stopped. It's really stopped in Purim. So that's
Thank God.
And
Thank
we're
everyone in the street saying, "You don't need the masecha anymore. You don't need the mask anymore." And people you don't know, of course, jumping on each other like, "You don't need it anymore. You don't need." So everyone becomes brothers and sisters. When we have war, we're the most unified, and like you said,
And so
we're
that's
not-
the other thing. So Gabi, you raised a good thing, and then Annette, I want to hear what you had to say, but I just wanted to share is God bless the Jewish people. God really should bless the Jewish people. We sometimes don't find our unity until we are threatened. And then we are able to see ourselves as being united and together, and we rally together. And we have, and we have to understand this is one of those cosmic dynamics, that because the unity of the Jewish people is not just a really nice thing to have that makes the world a more pleasant place, but is actually defining of God's reality. There is a huge anti-force, a Yetzer Hara on the Jewish community to be not unified. We are now, all people squabble, but I think we've raised it to a whole new level. Like that seems to be a thing. And it says, so the Jewish people have to work very hard to stay together. That's why I find it pathetically funny that anyone thinks that the Jewish people have a plan to rule the world because we can't agree on what melody to use for Adon Olam. So I'm not sure how this plan is actually getting implemented. So it is, and we do have a plan. As we said, someone said we don't, let's see, I think it was Annette who said this a long time. We don't have a plan to run the world. We just have a plan for how the world should run. And that is according to the laws of Hashem, the Torah, which will bring peace and happiness for everybody if they would just let us do it. But they can't let us do it until we get ourselves together and we have a real force. It's like magnets when you put them, like, isn't that always interesting when you take magnets and you put them opposite and there's like actually an anti thing pushing them away. But if you flip them over, then they go like that. It's like, it's the same thing. We're just on the wrong side of the magnet. We just need to flip it over so we bind together instead of push away. Annette, what would you like to say?
Well, I was thinking a couple of little things. One was when you talked about coming together during Purim, one of the ways to me that we most usually come together is for the Megillah reading.
Yes.
You're required to hear it live. It's not good enough to hear it, over the phone kind of thing. And you really need to hear it live. And so it'll be interesting to see how that's going to play out this year, of people gathering to try to hear the Megillah and be safe, at the same time. And then there will be those who want to make a big brouhaha, during Purim, and will gather together and they will have their little feast together. And there will be those of us who will be like, no way, Jose. Yeah. And we'll stay, amongst ourselves, during the holiday. Literally, before I got on your class, I pulled up, just so happened I got an email from High Lifeline, send Purim cards, and I'm going to send Purim cards just because I don't know if there's enough time to get the cards and then mail them out again. And you pay per card, you make a donation. And I'm like, good enough. I will do my, allotted little mishloach mano, but I'm not going to go around delivering goodies. And I remember last year getting little mishloach mano where they were little jokes with regard to Corona.
Oh, yeah.
Corona beer
that too.
You got the little medical mishloach mano where they had the little candies were pills, and you got your little mask from someone, and you got, I still use the mask I got last year in the Purim mishloach mano is one of the masks I still use. But at the time, at least in Houston, you're thinking it's a big joke. You're not processing what's going to be coming, that here we are a year later, and it's not funny. It's not a joke. We're still using the masks we got a year ago. But people who still are going to ignore common sense.
Yeah.
We're
hoping that people will be smart. But I have to say that I was one of those people who gave a friend of mine a can of Corona beer, saying, I understand that this is actually the most effective homeopathic antidote, that if you drink Corona beer, you will not get Corona. Etta.
Well, I just wanted to say that, though I feel for everyone that's been hurt by this coronavirus, and we all have been, I still feel that our motto cannot be safe, because there's no such thing as safety without Hashem.
That is true.
You can run, but you can't hide. Hashem will make us sick or keep us well. That's the way it works, I feel. So when I hear the word be safe, it makes me feel like retching, because you need to be brave, and you need to have your common sense, do your due diligence, do the right things. However, there is no safety while you're alive, because we are all vulnerable.
Exactly. Right. So that would be a chapter in our book of Living in the Present Moment, of the difference between safety and security. And safety is, ultimate safety is not possible, because there's always something. And that book was written well before COVID. That being said, we do have the idea of hishtadlut, that we have to take reasonable precautions that are given to us that we can understand and can appreciate. And everyone has to evaluate those for their own particular situation. And I listened to a rabbi just yesterday who was talking about, like, what's the message? I said, like, the message is that we are not in control. Just like you said, there are people, somebody who got it and they were 40 years old and God forbid they passed away, and somebody who was 100 recovered. and somebody was around somebody breathing on them all over and they didn't get it, and somebody who just passed by did get it. It's like, you're not in control. And while we have our hishtadlus, we do have to do things like Hashem is running the world. Thank God Hashem also gives us doctors. That's also in this week's Parsha, that if you hurt somebody, you have to pay their doctor's bills. So you don't say, well, God's in charge, and if he wants you to be healed, he'll heal you. It's like, no, you pay the doctor bills for this person that you hurt. And this is where the doctor is given permission to be a healer. But he also she can also only be encouraging and can never give up on a patient. It says we don't give up on people and say, well, I know how this is going to go. It's like, no, you don't. You can say, in my experience, this scenario has been very difficult and has had, very difficult conclusions, or the prognosis wasn't good. So I suggest you, whatever, take care of whatever. So, but they cannot say you as an individual are doomed. They cannot say that. They are supposed to remain hopeful. So Judaism is always about this balancing act. It's always about, we have our role, and then we have the role where we say, Hashem, you are running the world. In the end, it's like I shared with my class, I think I told you before that when we were in Israel just now, that I tripped and fell on the street. And I'm very careful. I'm so hypervigilant because I tend to trip. I don't know why. I'm really pretty graceful, but at least my mother told me I was, because I took ballet lessons. Anyway, I bring a bath tub, an inner tub mat with me when we travel to Israel, because standing up in a bathtub and showering, I slipped one time and I banged my shin, and it took a really long time. So I pack a rubber mat to put in the bathtub wherever we are, which is really stupid. But anyway, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing to stay safe. I'm doing this. And then Friday night, we're walking down the street and I get my leg caught up in a string, basically, that's on the street that gets wrapped around my ankle, and I go face plant on the street. So I was like, I thought I was being so safe. It's like, you know what? You can only do so much, and then Hashem is running the world. I feel like that was a direct, like, Ellyn, be normal. And then it's like, you have to trust Hashem. It's like, Hashem is running the world. So now what is my job? My job is Mishpatim. My job is to follow the laws of the Torah, to follow the guidance that the Torah lays out for me in my interactions with myself, with my family, with my community, with students, with workers, with people who borrow money, all of these things. That's what I'm supposed to do. And the rest of it is up to Hashem. And Hashem is running the world. And I can't outsmart. Like, I'm going to outsmart him. I'm going to bring my bath mat everywhere, and I'm not going to trip. It's like, oh yeah, I can make you trip just on the street, walking down with nothing on the road. So it was painful, but it was interesting. It was a teaching moment. So we should all take whatever precautions we can, but remember to direct our eyes to Hashem above. Hashem is running the world. And when we recognize that, and when we do what we can, and it's, Purim is fun. Purim's a fun holiday. This is a fun job that we have. It's only heavy because we haven't been so successful, but it's a fun job to have. When the Jewish people all unite, what could be nicer? Sharing treats with each other, giving tzedakah, coming together in healthy times for a Seudah, listening to the Megillah. I think that's a plan I can get my head around. That's the plan. That's our plan for saving the world, and I think it's a really good one. So this triple header of this Shabbos of being Parsha Mishpatim, Shabbat Shekalim, Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, Adar should fill us with a triple level of simcha, and that hopefully we'll be able to go into this, and this will be the only masks that we will need to wear will be the ones that we want to wear for Purim, and that we shouldn't need to have the other ones in the very, very near future. So God willing, we will reach that. Thank you so much for joining me. If anybody else has any other comments or questions.
Amen, amen, amen.
Ellyn?
Yes.
Amen, amen. Yasher koach.
Baruch Ti. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you
Ellyn?
so much.
Yes, Darlene.
No,
Darlene
Ellyn.
Josby.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you again. It was lovely to be able to join the class like this. Just a couple tidbits. This special Shabbat is actually my youngest son's bar mitzvah portion.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. And I would like to say, I think my sister has also joined your class. Our mom died on Tanit Esther.
Oh,
So,
that's the fast of Esther. Wow.
yeah, so here we were under closure, and obviously no one could come for Shiva or anything, but you know, my husband read the Megillah, and so you know, I heard that. So it's kind of a bittersweet kind of a time for us.
Yes, it is.
But when you were mentioning before, I just want to say about one is not supposed to count Jews.
Right.
And so several years ago, I felt uncomfortable saying to people when they asked how many offspring I had. So I thought a way to get around that is that if each of my grandchildren brought one apple and put it in a basket, I would have 23 apples. And the same for my great-grandchildren, I would have too many apples.
I mean, your apple, your bushel of your apple basket should overflow. That's
Thank
lovely.
you. And thank you again for the lovely class. Thank you to everyone for supporting this class. It was important to my mom, and it's important to me. So
Well,
thank
we
you
miss
again.
her. We miss her. She was a wonderful inspiration to all of us.
I miss her too.
Sure.
Thank
All
you
right,
for being
Darlene Josby will be very happy to have you join us whenever you're up in Israel and can.
I will try again.
Okay, wonderful. All right,
for
ladies.
being a sponsor.
Yes, thank you for being a sponsor. We really appreciate it, along with Trudy and Ray and Della Levy. Really appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Hi.
All right, ladies, have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos and an early Chodesh Tov. It should only bring lots of simcha to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen?
Yes, Trudy.
Oh, I just said thank you.
Amen.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
It's Joyce
Hello, Joyce.
with a voice.
Joyce with a voice. I love it.
I know. So when you deliver the baskets, do you normally can you do it? Do you do it anonymously or?
Beautiful question. The answer is no. The person needs to know who it is from. And the reason is because you're trying to create, the whole point is to create a relationship.
Oh,
and
right.
you can't have a relationship with an anonymous. So on one hand, tzedakah being done anonymously is fine and lovely, but not shalach manas. So they often have somebody who sends it, who is the intermediary, who is shaliach, who delivers. So that's kind of a custom that people do have, of deliver this for me to somebody, but the person needs to know, because otherwise they can't develop the feeling of affection and connection with you because they don't know it came from you.
Makes
So
sense.
very, very good question. Very important question.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right, ladies, have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.